executive pop-up webinar series. And today we have a special guest, and we are going to be talking about something that is near and dear to a lot of the owner and operators' hearts, as well as the directors too. And the title is, have you ever thought to yourself, it's their job, they should just do it? Okay, and our special guest today will be Vernon Mason, as you see him up there in the corner. We will go ahead and do an introduction in just a couple moments. I'm Tony D'Agostino. I'm the founder and CEO of Care 360. So thank you all very much for joining today. Let's go ahead and move forward here. More people are popping on as we do here. Let's move to the next slide. So we're going to go through our agenda today, which is a welcome, and want to remind you, if you look at the toolbar, there's a few different elements on the toolbar. There's a Q&A, and there's also an opportunity to either raise your hand and or chat. We are using the Q&A function today because we do have a lot of people who are on, as well a number of individuals who may have questions, and I would encourage you in the Q&A to ask questions. Please don't in the chat, as we won't be going there and attending to those questions. I do have some of my marketing team who will be focused on both the chat as well as the Q&A and looking at your questions, and hopefully bring a few to us before the end of this. Want to let you all know that you do get a certificate for participation. So as part of your registrations, you do have instructions on receiving your certificate. If you have any trouble for any reason, please do not hesitate to email us, and we'll be sure to get you your certificate. We're going to go through a couple housekeeping items, and then I'll go ahead and introduce Vernon, and then our discussion topics where he will take it over, and then we'll try to get to some question and answers and wrap up. So moving forward, one of our opportunities, our housekeeping items, is want to make sure everybody is becoming aware of our solution that we've brought out there for what I call the donut hole that has not been met in the childcare field for staff and for management, and that is IC 360 ECE Healthy Advantage. The Healthy Advantage solution is very unique, and we constructed it specifically for this industry. It is for members, but we're also offering it to non-members, and this is really a way to help recruit and engage your staff, to get them on board, but also to be part of that journey of keeping them for that career ladder. Instead of them seeing your business or your role that they have you in is just a job for them to be in your company, they see it more as a career. It is highly affordable. So weekly payments for them is like $11.50 to $90. For you as an owner operator, it's $25 per employee a month, way less than a major medical. It is also highly flexible. So there's 5 different program options. Each one of the program options also comes with a full telemedicine program with no copays. It's for immediate use. Unlike major medical, there is no high deductible. There is no deductible. This starts from $1, and this includes office visits for $15 office visits, $15 specialist visits. It is really scaled to what our ECE childcare staff needs are, and you can either have that as standalone for the staff, or you can pair that with major medical. And again, the fees for the premiums are very inexpensive. We talk in language of ECE, childcare, Montessori, anything in early learning, because we're speaking, and this was created for teachers, for schools, for directors. And it's also an ease of implementation. We have also paired with the benefit liaisons who help educate the staff on making decisions for it. And it is something that they fully can get to understand what any of their questions might be, what it compares to any existing programs, and then anything regarding any claims. It is also there where I think most of you have learned that being a member with the IC 360 it's a very trusted relationship, and we've vetted our solution providers out for us in this, and they have proven out to have meaningful relationships, and we're very knowledgeable in that. So we have educated them, as well as the fact that we bring our tribal knowledge to the overall solution. Our second element is we are offering a free member-free financial success assessment. And this is something for all of our members. It is to review your comparative financial statements for 2018 and 2019. This is comparative to industry data, both peer group data as well as industry-wide data. And we provide a list of recommendations with our financial experts. A number of you have been on calls with our financial expert team and have seen how straightforward they are and how thoughtful they are about what they talk about in the business side of the numbers. They do talk a lot about taking advantage of not only the CARES Act and the stimulus, but they're also looking at, you know, your value of your tuition, your cost and ratios to what you're paying for payroll, a number of different things you have. And again, it is a free complimentary element of your membership. What's up and coming are next week on next Tuesday, the best leaders are coaches. Join Jim Cooper and myself. Jim is an executive coach. He's also a certified executive coach trainer and developer. I actually became an executive coach through Jim's program probably almost 10 years ago, and it has actually been amazing and transforming for me. And Jim is going to be joining us to talk a lot about just what executive coaching is and what are the elements you can take for applying coaching into your leadership style. What are the kind of traits that you want to possibly exemplify as a coach, the do's and don'ts when it is coming to coaching, and the wins you can get from coaching, and much, much more. So more to come on that. You will see this come out later this week as for next week. So put a placeholder on your calendar for next week at 1:30, August 25th. And with no further ado, I am going to first run a poll and then introduce you to Vernon. So let me launch this poll first. And here is the poll for everybody. We'll give you a few seconds. If you were to rate how on board your team is, okay, are they on the same page with you? 100%, a proportion of that. Where is your team? Consider all the factors, including COVID and everything. 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. How engaged is your team where they're right with you? They're all rowing at the same pace down that river. And I'd love to see your things. We're having a bunch of good numbers coming in right now. So let me give it just a couple more minutes. And while we actually do that poll, all right, we're going to go ahead and introduce Vernon. So let me move forward and introduce to you Vernon Mason. Vernon Mason is an author, a humorist, and a humorist for sure. I've talked with him a number of times and always has me cracking up. But he's also been a very insightful, thoughtful keynote speaker. He has done a lot of training and workshops and has spoken to a lot of effects around leadership, around what directors and progress for making directors and the teams engaged. Welcome, Vernon. I go through all your accolades, but we'll spend the whole time doing it.
Hey, how are you? I am glad to be here. Welcome from, bring you greetings from Eastern North Carolina.
Well, wonderful. I love to hear a little bit of the draw. When I lived in Atlanta, I had a little bit of the draw, but I've now since lost that. So
I would love to lose just a little bit of it.
Yeah, well, listen to me long enough and you'll lose a lot of it. So, hey, before we even start, what do you think of the poll numbers here?
Well, I can't see them.
Let me share them. That's a good idea. I'll share them with everybody.
Yeah, let's see here. Wow.
So I thought it was going to be a little higher. I thought we were going to have a few more 5s, and people saying, yeah, everybody's on the same page, but it looks like little middle of the road that people are, struggling a little bit with getting people on board.
Yep. I think it's pretty spot on there. I think it's such a weird world we're living into. I mean, there's no normalcy in our world anymore. So, hey, I think that what they're saying thus far is pretty optimistic.
Yeah, I think so too. And with that said, let me go ahead and we're going to just jump right on here. Let me stop sharing this. I'll get rid of our poll. And today, I think you have a few different topics: finding successful leaders, leveraging incentives, motivating beyond self-motivation, increasing your quality recruits, decreasing your top talent turnover, which is hugely important, and obviously some new ideas which is great to hear from it. So I'm handing this over to you. You're the driver. I am your navigator. So just tell me where you want to go and we'll go on this journey.
All right. Well, this started from, I have a great friend, Susan, who I've known since college and turned out to be one of my directors for many years. And she was always, she's my age, and she was always the one when we were talking about an incentive program, she would always just kind of look at me and poke her lips out and go, they just need to do their job. I wish they would just do their job. And we would sit around our table in leadership meetings and I would have to explain why we just can't expect people just to do their job. And, it is one of those things where we can spend so much energy debating that, right? Or we can spend our energy developing and devising systems to actually put incentives in place to get people to be inspired and motivated to do a better job. Everyone always looks for, when you're hiring somebody, they're looking for someone self-motivated. Well, I don't know the statistics on that, but the reality is we will never fill our program with a staff full of all self-motivated people, right? So we have to find other ways to motivate people other than just being self-motivated.
Heck yeah, absolutely. So, I find with my staff that we do hire for culture. We do hire for this connectivity, but I will tell you this, I just had my leadership meeting today and everybody said, I said, where are we morale wise? And they said, we're about a 7. So I usually divide that in half. Okay, out of a 10. And they said, why are you so mean about it? I go, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to be honest, but people have tough times. So we have to try to keep them motivated.
It's hard for leaders to be realistic about where their team really is falling in the motivation. You have those people that will just assume that everybody's on board, right? Because no one tells them any different. And then you have those people who assume no one's on board, So I find that most people are exactly like the poll you're having. Most people are falling right there in the middle. We'll go to the next slide. So workplaces where employees have incentives. So this is why you should want to incentivize your people. Number one, they have increased productivity. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want your employees to do more, right, during their day, during the time that they're there? It boosts engagement. Everyone wants their people to be more engaged. An engaged workforce takes better care of the staff. That means their heart's into it. That means they're in to do what needs to be done. And lastly, it helps stabilize a workforce. And if there's anything in our workforce that we want to do is stabilize it a little bit. All right.
Yeah.
So this is it kind of a weird turn here, but I think it's very important to talk about. Incentive supports accountability. So when we want to salvage our best leaders, when we want to salvage our best employees, the way we do that is by holding our team members accountable. Now, many people in early childhood are afraid of this. We're heart-centered. We get into this field because we love the children, we love the hugs, we love to see them nurture and grow. And some of the very characteristics that make us great teachers, great with the kids, sometimes makes it challenging when we turn into a leader in the field and in our programs. And so this is one of those things that I have to read because I think it's so good. I don't want to paraphrase it. And it's from Stephen Covey, and it's a paraphrase of what he says, but it's enough that I have to read it. And it says, accountability breeds responsibility. The relationship between the parties involved and accountability is crucial to the success of their effort. Now, this is the real kicker here. Best put, accountability without a relationship is harassment. So who hasn't had one of those team members that you go down the hallway just to have a little bit of a conversation with about why they did something or how something happened or just inquiring on something, and all of a sudden they kind of blow up. They get in my neck of the woods would say their ass gets put on their shoulders. But anyway, and all of a sudden you're just like, wow, where did that come from? And what we find is what Stephen Covey believes is it is because there's no relationship. And without a relationship, trying to hold someone accountable is harassment.
Yeah. And you know what, Vernon, you mentioned that. And, one thing that I've often talked about has been about empowerment. I'm a big believer in empowering with accountability, but I like what you're saying here, because when you talk about the incentive, support, accountability, if you haven't basically told your team what to expect and what to do, and you're holding them accountable for those things, it is harassment.
Absolutely.
You know, you absolutely do not have that relationship. And I do think it is one of the things, I call it, you know, when owners and operators are fighting fires of the day in the center, like you, when you had your center, I have my center, we run around and we're like, we got to try to handle the problems here. So you start telling people what to do all over the place. And that's, I think that's the harassment side you're talking about.
Oh my, absolutely. All right, so go to the next slide. And this is a perfect segue into this. So the whole way of this whole thing about developing a relationship with our team, it stems from this. It stems from directors, from owners doing exactly what I'm talking about on this slide. And that is controlling everything, being responsible for everything. I can remember leaving and coming in, and my assistant director, my desk would be littered with Post-it notes. And I would go in and sit down at my desk, and I would not even really sit down at my desk and already be overwhelmed, right? And so I would pick up the Post-it notes and I would just start putting out fires. And then what I realized one day is like, why isn't she handling this? So then I would come in and I would take my little Post-it notes and go, well, yeah, the toilet stopped. We'll call the plumber. Okay, well, the bus needs a tire. Well, then go down to the shop. Well, this is, and so I would sort them out and I would put them in little stacks. And I began, when I would come in, I'd take them out to her and say, yeah, the toilet is stopped up. So, you know, the plumber that we use, yeah, Bridget. I said, okay, we'll give them a call. And the bus, you take care of that, take care of that. And after doing that about 3 times, she's not as slow as I thought she was. But after doing it about 3 times, I literally heard her say, well, I guess I might as well do it myself. Ding, ding, ding. You finally got it. Absolutely. But the deal is, when we fix everything, we send the message that we need to do everything, bring all the issues to us, and we will fix. When we do that, we become an overwhelm and an overload, and then it becomes virtually impossible to build relationships, because we are so bogged down in the weight that we carry every day that we can't take the moment, take a breath, and interact with our team in an appropriate manner. Now, one of the biggest keys to anybody in leadership in early childhood is this. In this world and in texting and today, anytime I do professional development days, I always have meetings with the leadership, and I always will bring this up, and I'll say, who's the director? And they'll raise their hand. I'm like, all right, so look at your phone. I bet you've got a text thread with your assistant director on your phone, and you do a constant texting back and forth. They said, yeah, I said, so if you get off work at 4 o'clock, how many texts do you get before the center closes? Oh, at least 2 or 3 every day. And when you come in at 7 in the morning, your assistant doesn't come in until 9. How many texts are you sending them in the morning? Oh, at least 1 or 2, or vice versa. And so I have to remind them, when you're off, you're off. Train your people to handle what's going on at the program. And to be honest, there's only maybe 10% of what goes on you really need to know, because there's very little that you can take care of when you're not there. But even when you're off, even when you're on vacation, if you're constantly doing these texts back and forth, then your brain doesn't calm down. Your brain doesn't have time to chill out. You don't have time to chill out. And I will also say this. If your assistant director cannot figure out what to do because Miss Sally is off this morning, without you laying in bed sending her a text of who to move who and who to move where, if she can't figure that out, she's the wrong one to be your assistant director.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? You remind me of a book. I don't know, if anybody's heard of the book out there. It's the small ones. It was the 1 Minute Manager books by Ken Blanchard. And it was a 1 Minute Manager meets the monkey. And the monkey's a problem on your back. And one of the things that staff typically do very well, by the way, is they walk in and they say, here's my problem. It's now yours. And so Vernon, it seems like you turned the corner at a certain point in your career. What made you realize this as you started to turn your career and you started to develop this, like, wait a minute, it's not my responsibility. I have to give it back to the person who's giving it to me and let them solve.
Right. Well, what I realized is that, number one, the job in leadership in early childhood is tough. There's a lot of responsibility there. And the people who I saw do that job well were not handling the mundane details. They had other people to take care of that. And so that's what I learned is, okay, we all need to do our job. And, you know, we've all had that assistant that we're in the office and we're bogged down in all this we need to do. We look up the assistant and she's texting on her phone. You're like, girl, get off that phone and start getting busy. There's stuff to do. And so when I realized the best people in leadership are the ones that are directing the symphony. They're not in the back playing the heck out of that cello, right? They're directing the symphony. And that's what I became. I became a director of what. That's what the freaking job means. It doesn't mean do the grunt work, right? That doesn't mean I'm above doing the grunt work. That doesn't mean I won't get down on my hands and knees and clean up vomit and clean up, you know, crap or whatever I need to do. I will absolutely do it. But that doesn't mean I can't do my job effectively if I'm doing the grunt work day in and day out.
Yeah, no, totally get it. And it becomes actually empowering for the individuals you give the respect back to allow them to do their job instead of you taking it over for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, like you said, it empowers them. And what a great feeling when you can finally take a few days off and they don't bother you. Then you start going, is my cell service, do I have service? Is it working? What's going on here? And then you're like, oh my God, the building must have burned down. They don't want to tell me on vacation, you know, so, you know, yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, great.
All right. So, you know, so the interesting thing that incentives will lead you into accountability, and accountability helps you maintain your best employees. And I will say one of the first things that I learned in early childhood about the turnover scenario is this. Number one, if you have a turnover issue, meaning people are flooding out of your program, if the good ones are leaving, there's a negative Nelly in there somewhere. So my number one tip from my book, Don't Go, about turnover is, if you have a turnover problem, you've got a negative Nelly. And normally when I tell this and I talk about this in a keynote, I can literally see the directors turn and look at their assistant or turn and somebody go, oh my God, he just called me out, you know, and they'll always know exactly who that is, but they do nothing about it. Well, good golly, now is the time to get them out. Get them out. You know, now we all know some turnover is good and natural. Who hasn't gotten a letter of resignation from a teacher, and when they walked out of the room, we did our happy dance. And, you know, we're like, oh no, I know that new employer needs you. You don't need to work out of notice. We'll be fine. You go ahead tomorrow can be your last day. You know, I mean, all of that, that's wonderful. But yeah, but taking charge and making sure that you do take ownership of protecting your good team members, and that is mean protecting them from those negative Nellies out there.
So, you know, Vernon, let me ask you this too. And, you know, and I love the way you describe it. You bring so much, truth to the way you present it.
I don't have the best filter sometimes.
Well, that's okay, because you're a pal of mine because you don't have that. But one of the challenges that we have that I think you know too is we know sometimes the root cause. We know the toxic individual. We know who is stirring the mud when you walk out of the room. But we have this thing called ratio. We have this thing that, you know, we're like, oh my God, I can't hire someone quick enough, but I know that I, as a director or even an owner, or I'm going to have to jump in that room if I have to let that person go. I have my own opinion. What is your opinion on that when you are pulling on both sides of it? You're trying to manage your business at the same time as doing the happy dance.
Yes, we've all been in that scenario where we had to keep someone a little longer than we thought we wanted to, right? But I can tell you, I have also been in an unemployment hearing with somebody and realized that husband had worked for me for 7 years. And I remember sitting there and it being a self-failure. I was like, how did I ever let her work for me for 7 years? Because this 7 years and this unemployment hearing is just the icing on the cake of a miserable relationship and the misery she brought into our program for those 7 years. All right, so where I have this COVID has absolutely proven my point that people will not push the bad seeds out, because I can tell you, Tony, I know more than one director, more than one owner who has still been given a gift. The COVID was a gift. Anybody you don't want to bring back, you have got a check written. Get them out. They can have extra unemployment. Everybody's drawing unemployment right now. It's not going to mess with your numbers. Just push them out and don't bring them back. I talked to someone last week, someone who we have talked on the phone with multiple times about this person who was the most negative person in the world, and more than one person has left and named this employee. They brought her back. I wanted to reach through the phone and punch them and say, why did you bring them back?
We got to start looking at them. Who brought them back? They might be the problem.
Absolutely. So yeah, so you got to figure out a way to do this. So number one, if you don't get ahead of your hiring, you'll never get them out, right? So if you're always behind one person hiring, if you're always hiring now and you could really hire two, then if you need to hire two, you need to hire three, you need to hire four in the funnel to get them in there. And you need to have your documentation in their file that when the time comes, when you have enough people in place, that you can go to that person. Again, this is a time when you have to put your big girl panties or your big boy pants on, and you go to them and say, you know what? It's been real.
Yep.
But we have our relationship, we've outgrown each other. It's time to move on. So today's your last day, right? Yeah. We just have to. You just have to rip that Band-Aid off, because what happens is the people around these people will continue to turn over until you get that bad seed out. So it's just a matter of time. They're running away so many good people.
Yeah, I like to relate it to having a biter in the toddler room. If you do not control that biter, that room will clear out, right?
Absolutely.
So if you don't put something in place, you're spot on. You know, I used to own a staffing company, and you have to always be recruiting. There's not like, oh, we're full today, now we're going to stop. So you're spot on there. Documentation is absolutely critical. I remember at my Irondequoit location, I had a gal by the name of Marcia, and she had always managed up to her. She always made me feel like, oh, things are really intact. She's really got it great, but we kept on losing staff. Finally, I figured out, guess who the problem was? It was Marcia. And I had to go in there as hard as it was, because I knew that the workload for me and my whole team was going to go through the roof. But I just had it. That day I came, and the day she walked out, she was so surprised. But when she walked out, the relief that came over everybody was phenomenal. The energy just came up dramatically.
You can just, it's palpable. You can just feel it. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. So now the next thing is interesting. I remember giving out bonuses as a director, and I remember coming home and saying, I can't believe no one thanked me. I gave out bonuses and nobody even thanked me. And it took me a little while to realize, well, number one, the first little hint I'll give you, because, you know, I say, if I'm in charge, it's my job to do, if there's any manipulation to go on around here, it's my job to do so. And so I will tell you, so what I would start doing is I would plant the seed of appreciation. So if nobody thanked me for something I would do for them, I would make me a little note to go in the bathrooms. And I would send a little note out on the little way we connected with our team. And I would tell them, thank you so much for all of you who stopped by the office to say thank you for what we had done for you. I really appreciate the pats on the back. We do it because we care about you. And then they'd start coming and starting saying thank you. So manipulate them a little bit, plant that seed of appreciation. The other thing is, I realized at some point, because of interactions with my staff, the more you do something without any expectation becomes without them having to do anything to get it, it becomes expected. So now we're thinking we're giving this nice little Christmas bonus, and we're thinking they should be appreciated. But then when the year comes, maybe this is the year for your program. I don't know. It's been a little rough year. So maybe this is the year you aren't able to do one. So they don't come to you and say, oh gosh, we're sorry you don't have enough money to do that. They come to you, and because they're a little bit agitated, because they expect that bonus and now they're not going to get it. So they don't appreciate it because it is something that they just are expecting. So we've got to take that expectation piece away from them, and so that they begin to start looking at it as something that they appreciate, and it is an incentive.
So let me ask you this then. So I think you're spot on with this too. Again, one of the things that I think a lot of our owner operators have done, who they get into this, I call it a rut, because it really is a rut. You've done it for a while. You're like, well, I'm super kind. I've given bonuses out. Heck, I walk through the office and I hand out dollar bills. You know what I mean? And give, PTO time off. I do all these things. But now I've done it. Now they expect it. Now I'm sort of known for it. How do I turn it around? How do I start?
It's all on the way you phrase it. And it's a PR you roll out, and you roll it out before, it's due. Let's just say if you typically give out a Christmas bonus, say the middle of December or whenever, you want to roll out what you're going to do in place of it. And you roll it out that makes it good for them. We are very excited to let you guys know that, our Christmas bonuses have been averaging this. And now this year, you have the ability to receive or to earn a Christmas bonus that is this amount, right? So it's rolling it out for them. And that exact scenario is exactly what I did probably 5 or 6 years ago. We changed it because they didn't appreciate the Christmas bonus. It became expected. So we wanted to see attendance improve and other things improve. And so we developed this whole program where they had to earn it. And now I will tell you what happened is we had people who'd been working with us for 9 months get a big fat $500 bonus. And we had people who'd worked for us for 20 years get $30. It is what it is, right? And so if they're not earning it, you want the high performers to win it, not the ones who just expect it. And we have put on a big girl panties or big boy pants, and we have to roll it out there, and we have to stand behind it, right? You have to. And the other thing I would say about that is that we want good behavior. We have to incentivize good behavior. When we incentivize it, that behavior gets repeated. Go to the next slide. And because I think this one is such a good thing. It's another one of those things I feel like I have to read because it's got great information. People will typically repeat behaviors that are rewarded and not repeat behaviors that aren't. Rewarded things that are important intrinsically to the individual. When an incentive is included with a goal, the individual is further motivated to achieve that goal. So of course, we want people to do better things. And so by giving them what it would take to achieve that goal, they will be more than likely to reach themselves out there to attain the goal.
So let me ask you about that. We've talked about that, and a lot of it has been monetary. What other kind of rewards outside of monetary have you seen?
So go to the next slide.
Okay.
And the next slide is I talk about, and if you haven't read this book, put it in your Amazon cart right now. It's 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. It becomes one of your legs of operating an organization, because you're exactly right. So we want to have a one and done. We want to develop this system. We want to develop this attendance incentive that's just going to fix it. And you know what? That's not going to happen. And I will tell you that was hard for me, because my mind said I want to put a lot of energy, a lot of time in it. I want to develop it, and I want to check that box. And when I realized it has to continually change. And one of the reasons for continual changes is this: different types of incentives affect people and motivate people differently. There are some people that work for you that absolutely are not motivated by money. There are people who are motivated by time with you. There are people that are motivated by being praised in public, right? There's many, many different kinds. And the 5 love languages, there's a little quiz that your employees take. I encourage everyone on, if you haven't done that, you take it yourself. It's very enlightening to see how you love appreciation. So figuring out how your employees are incentivized. I literally have sat in my office with Miss Pat, a teacher of mine, and we were talking one day, and I was offering her a raise, and she literally said, "That's not important to me, Mr. Vernon. That's not why I work." I'm like, wow. Okay, girlfriend, that's real good. But so another incentive that we would do is each year, and because I believe in multi-purposing things and PR, each year we would have, there is a local best of contest out there.
Sure.
So each year we would run we would get nominated for best childcare program, right? And so you could vote once a day, every day while that was going on. Well, I figured out through word of mouth that some of my teachers were some of the best people that wanted us to win, that would go and log on every day and vote for us. And so then I started incentivizing them to do that. I would say, hey guys, remember we won best of last year, and remember what we did last year. And what I did was this. Number one, we wanted good attendance, because we're like anybody else, we struggle with attendance. And so what we did was say, okay, if we win best of, we will increase your pay by $1 per hour for either 3 months or 4 months, depending on how our budget runs and how our revenue is coming in, how our enrollment is. But we'll increase your pay $1 an hour. This is the catcher. You have to work your all scheduled shifts. You cannot call in sick. A doctor's note does not count. If you're more than 3 minutes late, I know that's still tardy, but we had to draw a line somewhere, and we had teachers who would clock in using ProCare, and at times at my largest center, they had to wait in line with parents to fingerprint to log in. So we said 3 minutes, and once you're over 3 minutes, you're done. And it was also done by the week, right? And so if they could qualify this week, if they were more than 3 minutes late, or they called in sick, or they had to leave early, or whatever, they were disqualified, right? So then they could start again next week. So that's one good thing to remember, is that incentives, especially in our industry, have to be for a short period of time. You can't say have perfect attendance from July 1st through December 1st. It will never work. They'll lose it the first week in July, and then they're done, right? Yeah. It will never work.
Absolutely.
But I will tell you, you will be shocked how many people won't get $1 an hour. And they say, and this is a great example, they say how the thing that's wrong in our industry is because the people are low pay, and they would do anything for more pay. They just need more pay. They won't come to work for more pay. They won't come to work on time for more pay. We're offering them $1 an hour.
You are spot on. And one of the things that we learned too is we were doing our holiday party every year, and we were giving out these beautiful trophy awards. Who is the top, rap? Who is the top teacher? Who is the best? Who is this? Who is that? And it started losing its luster. People would walk up at the stage, and it's like, yay, pictures. That was fine. So we turned it around one year, and I have a group of ambassadors. I created ambassadors in each location, and they said, okay, I go, we just want to reinvent it. So they came up with it, and they just did a paper plate award. And all they did was create an award, which was just on a paper plate, and they just wrote something comical, funny, or interesting about an individual, and gave those awards that they have observed about someone through the year. The team never had so much fun. It was not more highly motivated that they wanted to have a paper plate award the following year. So it cost them nothing.
But you know what? And they have buy-in because it came from them.
That's right.
It was organically grown. So that's wonderful. All right, go to the next slide. So the next thing I would like to talk about. So there was one slide I think I might have missed. I didn't send you, but let's talk about raises and bonuses. We talked about that. How bonuses should be incentivized, right? There should be a way you earn them. Well, raises works in a very similar way. Please, 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 please do not give across the board raises. Because what happens across the board raises? An employee who is working their butt off, who is a strong employee, they're going to get $0.25 an hour. The one that they're working harder because of their coworker or their person that comes in the afternoon, who they're having to work harder to take up the slack for that work person, they realize that person is also getting $0.25 an hour. So it doesn't incentivize them. It pisses them off, to be frank, that they got $0.25, and then that slack person that they know. And the thing is about a weak link in your program, who knows who the weak link is? Your star players. Who supports the weak link? Your star players. Who takes up the slack for your weak link? Your star players. Right? And so who is going to get the exact same raise as your weak link? Don't let it be your star player, right? So if people don't deserve raise, don't give them a raise. If people deserve more, give them more.
Right? What does it do when your star player sees you give a raise to someone who doesn't deserve it? What does it say?
It gives them no incentive to do better. It gives them no incentive to even do their job. It says that we don't appreciate hard work.
Yeah, you actually motivated them to emulate the person who isn't a performer.
Exactly, exactly. So just like some quick tips on developing incentives and some characteristics for the incentives. Number one, they need to be earned. The second one is the expectation needs to be clear. There's nothing worse than putting out an incentive out there that's muddy and people think that they're going to qualify and then be told after they think they've done the work that they don't qualify. They feel cheated, right? So making sure that the expectation is clear. So when you have written it out, when you've gotten it out, handing it to a couple team members and say, this is a pilot program we're going to run out. I want you to read this. I want you to explain to me what this means. So get it from a classroom teacher, someone who is going to, who has to live by it. Give it to them to see if they understand it. Those people also, if they give feedback and input, they also will become, as you said, someone who is out, you know, cheering the program on. It's a good program. I like the way they're doing this, whatever. Okay. All right. The other thing about incentives, they need to be achievable and realistic. You can have these grandiose ideas of what you want people to do, but if they can't reach it, or if only the top 1% are going to reach it, then it's way too ambitious. This is not about rewarding your A players, about pushing your A players into being A+ players. This is about incentivizing your C players to become Bs and your B players to become As, right? There's much more of that.
To that too, Vernon, when you talk about that, something you mentioned earlier, which I think fits in here perfectly too, is if you're going to put out those rewards or what have you, if it's, you have to make it not only achievable, but you can't have it be like, well, I'm putting it in now, and by the way, you'll get the reward next August.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
It's got to be short enough. So, you know, something that's manageable, something that they can all get on board with.
Yeah, and that's the next one I was talking about, is it needs to be limited and short. Make the time frame, even if it is for like a grand prize. And we're talking about raffles. You know, I will tell you that raffles don't work with everybody, right? If you think about when you're trying to do an enrollment incentive with your families, right? Raffles are not always, the only raffles that I see that really get movement is my buddy Josh, that will raffle off a full year tuition. Now might get parents moving then, right? But there needs to be a little incentive that they get for doing the referrals, and then they get put into a full year's raffle for tuition. All right. So same thing when you're dealing with your staff. If the people are not gamblers, raffles are not going to make movement. So if you're going to raffle off something because you want your program, and I did raffles, but because I wanted my program to seem really important, because, you know, we didn't hide the programs. We would acknowledge it on Facebook. We would acknowledge it with our parents, because we wanted to be out there. We were leveraging this to continue to push ourselves to out there in our communities as the program to work for. Look at what they're doing. They're giving away an iPhone, or they're giving away an Apple Watch, or whatever we're giving away. So, but what we should say is the raffle should be the secondary prize. So I talked about my program was an attendance program from July till December, right? So they obtained something each month that they had perfect attendance, right? And then when December came, those people who had perfect attendance for a certain percentage of that time, then they were put into a raffle for a much larger prize, like I said, a MacBook or something like that. That was quite a good prize. But it would not have been effective, again, to run from July to December with nothing in the middle to incentivize them along the way. It's like a little puppy, you know, that you got to give them a little bits. You're trying to lead them to the finish line. But if you just say, hey, if you go here, you win, they can't go that far. Number one, they won't make it. They can't hold out that long. And the whole idea of, well, I don't win anything. I never win anything. I'm not even going to try. That takes that out of it, because they're winning incentives all along. So second, the big raffle, if you're going to do a raffle, the big prize should be the secondary prize.
Yeah, you know what, and I appreciate all those, and those are some great tips. When you look back, you know, when you had your centers, what do you think were the incentives when you reflect back on it that tended to work the very best for you?
People, they loved time off, which was the hardest thing to get. It was the most difficult thing to get, because, you know, we, like anybody else, we struggled with attendance, right? And so, and also don't forget the incentive, speaking of that, don't forget the incentive of people coming to work, because if you don't come to work on a regular basis, if you can't come to work on time, number one, if you can't, you know, work 5 days a week, you can't have a full-time shift, right?
Right.
People
Yeah.
forget about those things that you say, well, you know, this is how I would handle it when someone wouldn't come to work 5 days a week. And every week it was 32, 34, 36 hours a week. If they work 40 hours a week, it was like, well, hallelujah, I can't believe she come to work all week.
Yeah.
But those people in time, you just go to them and say, look, you know, I pulled up and I would print it out. And most of them, they don't believe it. I would print it out and say, you're averaging 33 and a half hours a week. So we've got this 12 to 6 position. That's 30 hours a week. It works out perfectly for you. So we're going to transition you over in that. Well, they're going to have a meltdown like the 3-year-olds who you won't let play in the mud puddle, right? But it's a great conversation starter because you may not take it away from them during that conversation, but
Right.
you laid the groundwork. Girl, if you don't come to work, you're not having a full-time job. You're going to work 12 to 6, right? Exact same thing because, you know, it is coveted. I know in my programs, it was coveted to have those early morning hours. They all love to come in early. They love to come in and get off at 2:30 or 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon, right? If you can't come to work on time, you cannot have an early hour. You cannot have a 7, 7:30, 7:45, 8, 8:30. You're going to come to work 9 to 6:15. I'm sorry about your family life. I'm sorry about your cooking. I'm sorry that your crock pot is broken. But if you can't come to work on time, you cannot have early hours. Because I will tell you this also, Tony, this is also surprises people. I had a wonderful employee named Nell who worked for me for 15 years and was late 90% of the time. But let me tell you, she kicked butt in that classroom. And if I had to choose one of my employees in my almost 30 years of being in this industry, if I had to choose one of my employees to come and take care of me if I were sick or take care of my puppies or whatever, or my mom, whatever, she would be on my #1 list of people because she was kind, she was compassionate, and I tolerated her being late because she was so darn good with our kids. Because teaching is an art. There is some art into teaching. And you know, artists are a little crazy, right? They're a little funny, you know, they're a little odd, and that's okay. I'm funny, I'm odd, I'm crazy, you know, it's okay. But we found a way to make it work, but she could never, ever have the early hours. And she asked repeatedly. Anytime somebody moved, somebody left, somebody gave up some early hours for some reason or other, she'd always ask. And after 15 years, I refused to give it to her because she could not come. I would tell her, if you're on time, from here on, the next position that comes available, it's yours. She could never do it. And she finally did leave over that scenario. But I feel like I need to tell this story just slightly. People will say, well, how did you tolerate her being late? What did you say when people would come in and say, when you would get on there for being late, they would say, well, why? Nell's late every day. You don't get on her. Well, this was my comeback phrase. Well, you know, we're not in here to talk about Nell. We're in here to talk about you. But since you bring it up, I will tell you that Nell's strengths way outweigh her weaknesses. She is one of the best teachers we have here on site. And you're in my office because I'm not sure your strengths are outweighing your weaknesses at this point. So let's get back to you.
Very good. And strong comeback because it is bringing it full circle around to them. And, you know, when you talk about, because you're talking about motivation here too, but what you're also emulating too is like, for instance, with Nell is, it goes without saying is she brings a lot of value. She brought a lot of value to you. The individual you have, you're not going to treat them the same just because they show up.
Have you heard that phrase that was quite popular? I believe it was last year. Treat people fairly, not equally.
Yeah. No, I haven't, but that's a good phrase. I like
it. And people will butt me on that. Oh, what do you mean not treat people equally? I said, if you treat people equally, regardless of their height, you're going to get, if they need to see over a fence, you're going to give them all the same step stool. Well, she doesn't need a step stool. Well, she needs a bigger step stool. Yeah. But you can't give it to them because you're going to treat them equally. No, treat them fairly. She needs a 2-foot step stool. She needs no step stool. She needs a 1-foot step stool, right? So treat them fairly, not equally.
And actually, as an owner operator, offering flexibility because looking at it fairly is much more endearing to the teacher as it is of just spreading the peanut butter equally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So one of the biggest things, and I would say, I believe was one of the biggest things that led to my success was participatory management. And that is, you know, when we wanted to come up with an incentive, we wanted to change something, improve something. We will say through the recession, we were working on enrollment. Part of the incentives for them to achieve a fat Christmas bonus is their classroom had to be full. And and when someone moved out, someone had to be available to move in, right? But anyway, so one of the best things we did was we would go to them and ask them, what can we do? What can we offer you? What are you looking for? What kind of plan could it be? And we would come up with all kinds of things. You know, everybody loses their minds over leggings, right? You know, we because it came from my team, right? And I will tell you, I did a professional development day at my program a few years ago. Thought I was going to be funny. I went to the Walgreens on the way to the professional development day. I bought me the ugliest pair of leggings you could find. I changed in the parking lot. I hope it was not cameras because it was not a pretty scene. And I put those leggings on and I drove to the church. Yeah, it was in the church. And I got out. We had a professional development day and everybody just thought it was hysterical. I ran around there in leggings and they took pictures and everything else. They complimented me on my legs. I'm like, whatever. But anyway, and so, what I found at the end of the day is those things are comfortable. Oh my, it was like better than pajamas. It was one step away from being nude. It was good. And so we changed our policy that they had been asking for years. So listening to your people, what's important to them, right? And to our people, it became leggings. And so ultimately we kind of transitioned. And so then what we said was we're going on week to week. And I know something else that our people, because we're in the South, it's hot as Hades. It's like living in a sauna down here, right? Something that our people, they wanted to wear flip-flops and sandals, right? Well, you know, our workers' comp said, no, can't wear flip-flops, can't wear sandals. You need to have shoes, closed toes, closed heels, blah, blah. Well, but then what we found is that was really important. So that became an attendance incentive. If you work your full shift this week, if you're here, if you're not late this week, next week you can wear your sandals, right? Same thing with leggings.
If I have some staff members listening to you right now, so I heard Vernon saying you can wear now flip-flops and sandals. When are you implementing that?
Every company is different, and I know some people don't turn me off. Don't turn me off because it's my goal. I have to push the boundaries, right? And so leggings became one of those things. If it's important enough to you, then drag your ass to work, and then we'll talk about it. We'll offer that, and we did, and we listened. So I'm talking about some simple incentives here. And then we had a great incentive. They loved our time. So this helped those people who weren't money motivated, but loved us getting together, loved to interact with me, loved to interact with our leadership. Well, then we would do things like, I don't know if you can see this, but we would do like Medea's had a Halloween movie coming out. So he said, okay, everybody will buy your ticket. If your attendance is good, from this week to this week, from this period to this period, we'll give you $25 to spend in the concession stand, right? Whatever, we would figure out something like that. So it wasn't huge, but it made a difference. And I will tell you, it really did hurt my heart a little bit when the people were lined up to go in and I'm standing there with packets of money and get to my people who've been with me for 25 and 27 years and had to skip over because they didn't come to work, right? You can't. What's fair is fair, but it really did hurt my heart to have to do that. So there's also, I believe in like an ongoing incentive program. We used to use those little yellow tickets, speaking of the movies, back in the day when I worked in the movies. Remember the little paper tickets that they would print off? They had a number on each side, use them for raffles. We would give, when we see employees, going above and beyond, helping someone out, handling a child appropriately, dealing with a parent who's upset or concerned or whatever, kicking butt on the tour, and what people really struggle with, just doing their job. Right. Just you walk by that window and the class is happy. They're singing. They're all in place. The room is not destroyed. There's no one crying. There's no angry face on the teacher. They're just doing their job. Give them a darn ticket, right? They would collect these tickets. We develop a menu. And where did we get our menu items from? We asked our people, what do you want? And we would develop a menu, and then we would give we'd give it out, and then they could cash them in for all kinds of things. They would cash them in for stupid things like pens and pads that we would have given them anyway, coffee cups,
that's cool.
Hats, what do you call those little hats with the top out of it, jackets, and all this stuff is logoed and all this stuff is PR, right? and
Yeah.
we'd give them their jackets they would earn, and we would logo their name on this, put their name on the side of it and things like that. And so then we would, and it would change and grow over the years, and that would be an ongoing thing. But remember, what is ongoing becomes expected. So you have to keep changing it up, and you also have to get hard on your leadership. So leadership, hear me when I say this, we would also have to buckle down on them, because we would find leaders would go around on a Friday because they were in a good mood and give everybody a ticket. And I'm like, don't make me come up there and cuss you. That is not how this program runs. And don't go out giving 3 and 4 tickets, right? So anyway, so then we'd have a menu of like, certain months we would run a special. If you got 10 tickets this month, you get a $10 gift card, or $10 Bath and Body Works. 20 tickets you would, and they could collect the tickets and keep them. Like if they didn't like anything that was on special for this month, they could wait and hold on to them. 25 tickets, got them a Yeti cup. So just a whole menu of things that they could get. And I'm happy that, I think on the slide, honey, I think my email is on there. And they also can find me. I have a professional page, Vernon Mason, my speaker page, because mainly what I do now is travel the country doing, well, I did before COVID. Now I sit at my desk and talk to people. But I travel the country and do professional development days. I come into companies and I motivate their people, and I make them laugh, and I make them cry, and I kick them in the butt. And I leave there exhausted and feeling wonderful. But I'm willing to share any of my resources I talked about today, any of my incentive programs. I'll send it out to you in Word, so you can just change the names and alter it, or just give inspiration to you. You know, my programs, the things we did are not perfect. Some of them are very budget driven, because, you know, we were there through many crises, and there were years that we didn't have the money. I'll tell you where you fail in your incentive programs is not doing one. Start somewhere, start something simple, ask for feedback from your people, let them help you develop this system, develop the process, develop the system, because when they help you develop it, they have input. If they have input in it, they will be engaged, and they will have buy-in, and that is what we want, is buy-in. Also, I almost breezed right over this. What I found in developing and in feedback into the participatory management, we often saw the next generation of our leaders, because those are the people that would give us legitimate things. They would bring us great ideas. They wouldn't say, I want a trip to the Mediterranean. Girl, so do I. And I run this joint. You ain't about to go to the Mediterranean. I might send you to the lake. But, you know, because they were just so, you know, off course, you know. But the people out there who have leadership potential, it's a great way to see what they're made of and what great ideas they have.
Yeah, well, you know what? You did a fantastic job here. We're actually right at the apex of our time right now, or the conclusion, I actually should say. We've already gone over the apex, but some of the things just to review, what you talked about, accountability alone is harassment. I love that. And it is true, without giving expectations, turning over the negative Nellies, getting them out of the organization quicker is going to bring a sigh of relief to everybody. Roll out your ideas with your team. What motivates them? What gets them incentivized? What gets them engaged? And, you know, incentivize the good behavior. Do not spread the peanut butter evenly, that was my phrase, I'm sorry, but not, you know, don't do always what is expected. Once you set up enough that it's expected, it's no longer probably good. And, you know, but you are engaging for fairness. So, you know, great time. It was awesome. I really appreciate it, Vernon. You did a great job on this. If we get some additional questions, do you mind if I send them over to you and we send them out?
Absolutely.
Registry?
Yeah.
And if anybody out there has any type of additional questions, or anything that maybe Vernon spoke of, or even I spoke of, don't hesitate to request it. We'll be sure to get it out. We're a pretty sharing community here, and we want to make sure that we also take care of each other, because it's not easy in our world these days, but we're sort of in it together. So Vernon, thank you so much for the generosity of your time. You've been wonderful.
Well, thank you, Tony. Thank you for the invite. I love it. I love being with our people. Our community is, you know, this is an industry that it, you know, becomes your world, you know, so I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you very much. You have a great day. And everybody out there, thank you all for attending our executive webinar series. We have one next Tuesday at 1:30 with Jim Cooper. Best leaders are coaches. So a lot more on leadership coming. And I do know that there might be some questions, but we have run out of our time. So thank you all very much. And we'll all talk to you soon. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye now.